he's always sort of been into Japanese cars.
Sort of grew up right up the street from each other and been mucking around with cars for years.
Keg's always wanted to work on cars right up until the night before an event.
Just two.
My name's Adam Mulder, I run DKM Fabrication. The boys seem to know me as Keg, so it's sort of stuck over the years. It started, I did a mechanics course when I was about 16 years old. The tutor didn't like calling me Adam, he just started calling me Keg one day, probably because I was a bit rounder than the rest of them. Yeah, so everyone just sort of took it and ran. I've worked for a couple of workshops. It's fun to work for someone. You've got an expectation, you work to it. The last two workshops I worked for, they sort of went under. So my friend and I decided we'd open our own shop, so that's where DKM came from. And I like cars, like anything to do with fabrication, metal. I love making something out of nothing. That's where my passion comes from.
He just loves working on cars, and he loves doing the fab work. And he'll come home from work because he has a full-time job. He'll come home from work and he'll work till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. But he just thoroughly enjoys it, and he likes to see the end result.
Keg's always wanted to work on cars right up until the night before an event. Hence, here we are, with the car still not finished. It's always been like that with his dad's car. Night before beach shop, late midnight, 4 AM missions. In fact, he even did a mission for Brendan where he was up till 5:30 in the morning, slept for an hour, got up and got the car ready for the speed show. Of course, he does the same thing when it's time to work on my cars, and I get stressed because I like to have it finished at least the day before the event.
We bought a shell of a car when he was 10.
Dad bought the Ford Pop when I was probably about 9 or 10. And that's something that me and him bonded over in the garage.
And when we got it, we put a 3-litre V6 Capri motor in it. I kept blowing head gaskets, and him and his mates tried to talk me into putting a V8 in it. I said, no, the wheelbase is far too short.
I sort of got my hands on it and chucked the 1UZ and stuff in it and made it a little bit more reliable than it used to be.
And he's now 27 and he's basically done all the work on the car.
The whole reason I'm in it really is just the passion for cars. I've always had a passion for cars.
He's always looked after me, basically built on a relationship, bringing on the RX-7 on board. Right from day one he's been developing it with me, using his fabrication skills.
He's done quite a bit of work for me over the time, and just grew into good friends that way.
All the guys' cars he works on and stuff, I see that, and I've got a real strong policy as you're only as good as the people who've got your back, and he's got a lot of the drifters' back, so you got to give back to people who do that, and Keg's one of those guys.
We've been friends a long time, so I know he struggles, I struggle, so we're rubbing each other's back really, and helping the boys out at the same time. Awesome, they have a respect for me, I respect their cars.
As far as him and cars, I've got quite a few videos of him at home doing burnouts in MR2s and that sort of thing, while Mum and I are away, of course, but and a couple of bit of drifting around the roundabouts just up from our house on video. But yeah, generally he keeps it to the track. These days he keeps it to the track, but he's grown up a little bit.
Yeah, it started off, I got a bank loan and I bought a FD RX-7, and they sort of frowned upon it because it wasn't road legal, it wasn't ever going to be road legal. and it was just purely bought for drift days and hacking around. And once I eventually bought them to an event and chucked them in the car, scared the shit out of them, they sort of got a bit of a love for it, and they've been to pretty much every event that I've been to ever since. There's a big list over on the whiteboard behind you guys. I've still got to weld half the floor back together. you can see the gearbox, you can see the drive shaft. So I've got to do that. I've got to chuck the seats in, a fire extinguisher, all the safety stuff, harnesses, make a bash bar for the front so in case anyone taps the wall tomorrow it doesn't tear the front off the bloody car. Yeah, and then just give it a good spanner check, make sure nothing falls off.
I think for New Zealand it's at a tipping point where it goes, whether it follows the likes of the original founders in Japan and how they've broken away from the real mainstream high horsepower, or whether it follows the likes of FD and Formula Drift in America. It's grown greatly in New Zealand. It's one of the fastest growing motorsports in the world. We all know that, and I think drifting is widely accepted in New Zealand because we put on a show. That's what the drivers are here to do. They put on a show for the crowd, and it's a fast pace. You walk away with rubber on your face. It's an awesome sport to watch. Where it's going to go in the future with New Zealand, that's up to the drivers. We're just here to run the events and support the drivers. The drivers are the ones putting on the show, so we'll support what they want to do, and they have a voice, so it's really up to the drivers because it's their sport. He's got a lot of knowledge, and he's quite a humble, quiet guy, and he doesn't always just chuck himself out there. So I guess in the past few years I've been trying to chuck him out there a bit more, and now it's sort of like, hey, Kia gets in your face. So he's jumped on as a supporter with this car and built this car to progress drifting in New Zealand. So it takes a lot of hours, a lot of support. He's been in there till 11, 12 o'clock, some nights 2 o'clock in the morning to get this car done. And he's bought this full V8 1U Mazda RX-7 FC to get people behind the wheel. So this isn't for us, this is for sponsors and potential people to want to experience drifting. And it actually gives them a real insight to actually how technical it is for drifting. You just can't go in there and chuck a figure eight or a 200k entry. We've got a cool working relationship, and I want to see this business grow, and hopefully we can support that.
Myself, I haven't been out on the track for a while. Last time I took my wife's car out and ended up tearing the entire kit off it when I hit the kitty litter. So I was in a bit of trouble after that. But
He's owned over 50 cars, but our latest car that we've got together, an A85 that we're building up, hopefully that'll be a
yeah, once we build the 85 it'll be ours, so yeah, if I wreck it, it's all good. The whole reason I'm in it really is just the passion for cars. I've always had a passion for cars. I love making something out of nothing. That's where my passion comes from.
I love his passion for cars. I share it. I can see that he's trying to achieve something. It's really cool to see what he wanted to do grow and turn into what we're developing here.